Hey, I'm Vinny DeMasi here on CultureSonar, and today I'm going to talk about what makes Eddie Van Halen sound like Eddie Van Halen. Come up with a short list of the greatest rock guitarists of all time, and you've got Chuck Berry, you've got Jimi Hendrix, you've got Eric Clapton, Jimmy Page, and you definitely have Eddie Van Halen. If you haven't listened to the first Van Halen album, which came out in 1978 recently, go check it out again, and you're going to see that it still sounds futuristic, and you'll hear that Eddie, when this came out, Eddie was pretty much a game changer. He had so much influence on so many other guitarists going forward. Let's talk about what was so unique about his style and approach to guitar. First of all, Eddie Van Halen played an instrument that wasn't available on the market at the time. Pretty much what was available was the guitars by Fender and by Gibson. Now, Fender guitars, including their most popular, the Fender Stratocaster, had a body shape like this, and that's what Eddie wanted. But they didn't have high output pickups. They had single coil pickups, which are a little bit thinner and more nuanced. Eddie wanted the higher output pickups that were available on Gibson guitars. So he bought a copy of a Strat body and he bought a copy of a Strat neck, and he took the pickup from a Gibson ES335 guitar and he put it on his guitar. He painted it with some I think bicycle paint, and it's the famous red and white striped guitar you may have seen in some of their early videos. Later on, he added what was called a Floyd Rose locking tremolo. Strats used to have a tremolo, also known as a whammy bar, that make it do dive bomb effects like this. Okay, but it wouldn't stay in tune. What Floyd Rose innovated was putting these locking nuts here at the top that clamped the strings, actually on both ends, and kept it in tune. So put those all together, and you've got Van Halen's homemade Frankenstrat guitar. Now, after the first couple of Van Halen albums really became popular, guitar manufacturers started making these guitars as production models, and by the 80s they were pretty ubiquitous. Everybody had one. Companies like Charvel and Jackson and Ibanez became really popular making these Van Halen style Frankenstrat guitars. This guitar made by Charvel is a direct descendant of Eddie Van Halen's original homemade Frankenstrat. So that's something really unique. He's playing a guitar that nobody else was playing at the time. It wasn't available because he put it together himself. Now, Eddie used a Marshall amplifier, which was pretty common among heavy rock guitarists at the time. He put a voltage control meter on it. I'm not going to get too into it, but it helped him tweak the sound, and he came up with a distorted sound that was affectionately known as the Brown sound. He also used an Echoplex echo unit to get a real ambient space-like sound, and he favored effects by a company called MXR, most notably the MXR phaser and the MXR flanger. So let's see if we can cop some of that vibe right here. I am going to start with the distortion, the gain. Then I'm going to put the delay on to make it sound really spacey. And finally, I've got the phaser, the MXR phaser. Put these all together. And we get an approximation of the early Van Halen sound. Now, one other technique that was really kind of unique to Van Halen was two-handed tapping. This is when one hand, the fretting hand, would do something called a hammer-on. Okay, sounding notes with just your finger, and then using another finger from your picking hand to sound a third note higher up the neck. I'm going to turn some gain on so you get the effect. So we've got the hammer-on, two notes here. And then we've got the tap note here. Now, Eddie never claimed to have invented this. There were other guitarists trying similar approaches, most notably Steve Hackett from the band Genesis. But Eddie was the first guy to really popularize it, put it in heavy metal music, and use it to the extent that he did until it became just a standard guitar technique going forward. One other thing we're going to talk about is his use of harmonic squeals. This is something he actually adapted from country artists who used to take the side of their pick slice across the strings to get this sort of squeal sound. When he did it with high gain, it sounded very heavy metal. Just one of the many techniques he appropriated from all over the place to get his really unique sound. One last interesting aspect of the Van Halen sound comes from the fact that both Eddie and Alex's dad, Jan, was a jazz clarinet player, and they grew up listening to jazz and big band music. So if you listen to a lot of their music, you can hear the subtle influence of people like clarinetist Benny Goodman or drummer Gene Krupa or band leader Louis Prima. I'm going to play a song from the first Van Halen album called I'm the One, and I want you to see if you can picture it being played by like a brass or a horn section, and not just by a guitar. See what you think. By taking all these disparate musical elements and fusing them into a unique whole, Eddie Van Halen created a monstrous rock and roll legacy. I'm Vinny DeMasi, and this is CultureSonar.